So perhaps you live in the great state of Florida, which I will put up front. I love Florida, but you might be a resident there and you're thinking, I'm done, it's time to move, and Charlotte might be the place for me. If that's you, then you've come to the right video. We're gonna dive in today on some of the many reasons, not me, but my clients have made the decision to leave Florida and come to the great state of North Carolina, specifically Charlotte. So we're gonna dive into that in just a second, but you guys know the deal. If you love this content and wanna learn more about Charlotte, North Carolina and the surrounding areas, go ahead, subscribe, like, and follow. And if you wanna see every time I post a video, make sure you hit that notification button at the bottom there and we will keep you up to date. Every single day I get calls, texts, emails, Zoom invites from people just like you looking to move to the Charlotte and surrounding areas. So if that's you, whether it's 9 days or 90 days from now, whether you're moving across country or across the town of Charlotte, give me a shout, call, text, email. I'm here to help you out. Make your move everything you want it to be. So let's talk a little bit about Florida. Now, I'm a great big fan of Florida. If I were to move anywhere there, it'd be Melbourne, Florida, because I don't know, it's the coolest little beach surf town and I love to surf. But let's face it, Florida is not for everyone, and if you've been there for a while, maybe it's time for a change. So this is gonna be a very interesting video because it's not actually my perspective. This is a list that I've compiled from clients that have moved from Florida to Charlotte, North Carolina, and why they made the move and chose Charlotte. So we're gonna dive into this list here. It's not that long, but it's pretty simple to understand. First off, you can swim in any of the waterways in North Carolina, specifically Charlotte, such as Lake Norman, Lake Wylie, Mountain Island Lake, the Catawba River, and there's no alligators. Yes, that's right. You can swim literally anywhere in any of those lakes. We do have some smaller lakes that are reservoirs in the area that you're not permitted to swim in because it is a reservoir for drinking water. Yes, they still do filter it. But when it comes to bodies of water in the area, everything is usable, and there's also a ton of public access to it. So for example, Lake Norman, which is the largest man-made lake on the East Coast, that particular lake has a ton of public access points. And if you live on the lake, you do have the ability to get, if you don't already have one, a dock to go ahead and dock your boat or jet skis or whatever kind of watercraft you want to use. Fun fact though, Lake Norman was actually formed and is owned by Duke Energy, and they provide permits to people for those docks. So you actually have to go through Duke Energy in order to go ahead and get your dock approved. It's not hard, it's a pretty simple process. I could guide you through it, but that is one of the first complaints that people have is, well, they can't always go swimming in a lot of the Florida area lakes because of alligators and snapping turtles and other such creatures that live in there. Now I will give a mad prop to Florida. I still haven't visited, but I want to, and it's Crystal River. If any of you have ever been, it seems absolutely magical, and my dream of swimming with manatees may come true one day. Now, what you'll find different in North Carolina is we don't have very crystal clear rivers. That's right, they can be crystal clear, but our larger rivers such as the Catawba River and other such lakes and waterways are murky. The reason for that is because we have a lot of silt and sediment that are in the lakes. So you're not gonna have that clear crystal blue look that you want. What I can tell you is while you're swimming in those lakes and bodies of water, you can see yourself under the water. So it's not like it's just darkness underneath, but you're not gonna see all the way to the bottom. Fun difference, but figured I'd mention it. Number 2, let's talk about the weather. Now this has a subset here, but we really don't get hurricanes. That's one of the biggest complaints I get from people coming from Florida is every year there's a new hurricane and they don't know where it's gonna hit, and sometimes it hits local. One of my clients coming from Daytona Beach, everything down in Fort Myers and everything else got completely wiped out after the last hurricane. And well, they're just tired of it. Many of my clients are just tired of having to deal with hurricanes. In North Carolina on the coast, we do get hurricanes, but they're few and far between. And honestly, when we get them, the damage is minimal. But over here in Charlotte, we really don't get hurricanes. Now, someone did make mention on one of my past videos that that's a misnomer. We do get hurricanes. We don't get hurricane force winds. So yes, if something hits the coast, it may move inland, but it's usually just a really bad rainstorm. Flooding is minimal, if at all. And the last serious hurricane we got was in 1989 when Hugo came through. So it's been a really, really long time since we've had any kind of bad or negative effect from a hurricane. We just don't get them. So that was one of the major differences, but let's also talk about flooding. Some of the complaints I've been getting from people that are my clients moving from Florida to Charlotte is they moved here because they were tired of the flooding. It seems that in Florida now they said, well, rainstorms are flooding houses. Things are just on the rise and they're tired of dealing with the possibility. Let's face it, you can't plan ahead for a flood. Now you might see a hurricane coming, but you never know when a flash flood is going to occur. Here in Charlotte, topography wise, we rarely get flooding just because of the way that it's set up. In addition, Charlotte proper, the drainage systems that have been set up when it comes to us having the right infrastructure has really supported the fact that we've got great runoff and drainage. And with the lakes nearby, everything has a place to go. So we really don't have that problem here. Number 3 is technically also still weather, but we're not talking about severe weather. We're talking about temperatures. Another complaint that I've heard from people is Florida's just too damn hot. That's right, it's hot in summer, it's hot in winter, it's hot in fall, it's hot in spring. Now, personally, I love the heat. You can ask anybody that knows me. I will lay in the sun, bake in the sun, and sweat is not a problem for me. I just love the sunshine. However, I do get that it's kind of nice to be able to put on a sweater and have a little bit of change of seasons. A lot of people coming from Florida are really excited about 4 seasons. And yes, Charlotte does get 4 seasons. We get the change of the colors in the fall with the beautiful foliage. We get cold weather in winter. By the way, cold. It's not Minnesota cold. It's not Montana cold. It's not New York cold. Our averages are like 50 degrees. It's really not bad. And honestly, we really don't get snow. Now, the mountains do get some snow about a couple times a year, but it's, again, minimal. Charlotte this last year didn't get any snow at all, like not a snowflake, not even sleet. We got no snow at all. So if you want someplace that has the change of seasons, nice warm summers, and by the way, you can still use your pool, probably I would say from April-ish time frame, because it's about 80 degrees out when this is being recorded in April. It's about 80 degrees out in April, and it'll be 80 degrees sometimes in October. You can use your pool that large of a span, and if you want to add a heater to it, you can extend it even longer. So for those of you Floridians that still want your pool time, I get it, and you can totally get it in Charlotte. Number 4, Florida is getting jam-packed. I'm sure you guys have noticed that there's been a huge flux of people moving to Florida. In fact, I have friends from Utah that moved to Florida. I have friends from Michigan that moved to Florida. I would love to be one of those people to move for Florida. Even part-time would be wonderful. But here's the challenge. If you are living down there and you want to get around on a daily basis, if you're in those most populated areas such as Tampa and Daytona, and I mean, honestly, Jacksonville, any place that's a larger city, the traffic is going to get heavier. There's going to be more people. And if you've been there a while, you might just not want any of the traffic. It wasn't like that when you lived there. That's what a lot of my clients are saying. So they want to move somewhere that has a little bit more breathing room. Now, while Charlotte is one of the biggest places, or should I say most popular places to move to, it was named one of the top 10, we have breathing room. What I mean by that is we have other cities and towns outside of Charlotte where people can move to and still have direct access to Charlotte proper. Charlotte is the second biggest banking capital in the United States, which brings a lot of business, brings a lot of industry, and brings a lot of finances. But with that, we have these beautiful towns on the outskirts of Charlotte that have started to grow and flourish because of the growth, meaning you don't have to be in the middle of the traffic-ridden areas. And by the way, traffic-ridden in Charlotte is minor. You're not gonna hit a whole lot of traffic. It's not terrible. Avoid some of the certain times of the day and certain roads, such as different corridors of I-77 when it's 5 o'clock in the afternoon. But here's the thing, it's not gridlocked. You're constantly moving. So if you're tired of all of the congestion and too many people in Florida, come on to North Carolina. It's kind of awesome. Number 5, this goes right along with congestion and lots of people. Another complaint that I hear is if you want property in Florida, they're charging you an arm and a leg for land that not only is soppy and wet, but hey, you may have a sinkhole under it. Yes, that's very prevalent in Florida, at least from what I know and then what people have told me. By the way, this whole video is based upon my clients' understanding of Florida from leaving it. So the cost of land is extremely high. If you want some chickens and you want to be outside, this may be the place to go. In fact, we actually don't have regulations that are going to prevent you from having chickens in your yard. You could be in the city of Charlotte and still have chickens in your yard. There's no limitations. You'll be fine. But the biggest thing is land. So if you're looking for a little bit of land, you can go just outside of Charlotte and get a house and land and still be under $400,000. In Florida, because it's become so popular, it's getting harder and harder to find land that's still close to a city. Because let's face it, you've got to work and you might want to actually go out to dinner and not be 45 minutes from a restaurant. So in Charlotte, we do have that. A lot of the areas that I would recommend looking in are going to be Concord. Actually, I would recommend a few different places: Concord, Midland, even further south, but there's some great spots further north. So take a look at Lincolnton, Mount Holly, Kannapolis, and actually even in Davidson and Mooresville. All of these areas are going to offer you not only the convenience to get to Charlotte, if that's really where you want to be, but you can also get a few acres and a house and be in a reasonable price range. Now, granted, I will note, depends upon how updated the house you want is or how big it is, but yes, you can get a house and land and still be in a really good price range. Next off, sinkholes. I know I mentioned this earlier, but I've had this come up and been mentioned more than once from Floridians moving here to Charlotte, North Carolina. And apparently it's kind of a thing. Now, it's not like sinkholes are popping up everywhere, but they realize that it could happen. And in fact, has happened in numerous cases over the last several years. So let's talk a little bit about what's going on geographical wise in Charlotte. Charlotte sits on a big bed of granite. By the way, in case you didn't know this, granite just doesn't open up into the abyss. It's very hard. But another thing you're going to notice is, similar to Florida, we don't have a whole lot of basements. In fact, Florida only really has any basements. Please correct me in the comments if I'm wrong, but because of the water tables. Well, here in Charlotte, a lot of times we don't have basements because there's granite underneath your house. Now, radon is something you may want to test for. It is radiation, and it can have health risks. But here's the thing, it's not like it's in every single house. It's very rare, but it's always good to test for. Now, you could have a house next door that doesn't test for radon, and your house could. Or you find it more prevalent in homes that have basements. But once again, very rare. And we can advise you on when and how to test for that. And you can remediate that, which is fantastic. So what houses do have basements? Well, if you're in the Charlotte or surrounding areas, the homes that have basements are the ones that are on a hill. So if this is the street level and you're on a little bit of a hill and they build the house, if it hits a certain percentage of crawl space that is of the proper height, they're going to go ahead and dig out the rest of the dirt and give you a basement. How awesome is that? But not unlike the Northeast and other parts of the country, they're not going to dig into the ground where all four sides of your house are going to be submerged with a basement. It's just not going to happen. So unless there's a walkout ability from the basement, it's not going to happen. Now, I think this is a great thing. There's beautiful homes that are on both crawl spaces and on slabs. Slabs become very prevalent in Charlotte. But if you do find a house with a basement or opportunity, and that's what you're looking for, we can find that. You're just gonna have to go to certain areas, and I can make sure I can advise you on that. So that's a big difference. Now, another difference is price per square foot. Now, I don't want to go too into detail on this, but from what my clients have told me and other partners of mine that are agents that work in Florida, the price per square foot on homes has skyrocketed in Florida. Now, I could say the same for Charlotte though. The price square foot per home in Charlotte has gone up significantly over the last 2 to 3 years. Charlotte is still slated to increase by about 10% per year in property value for the forthcoming years. Now, this is of course projected, right? Could be more, could be a little bit less. What's helping that, and what's helping potentially you if you're moving to this area, if you do purchase a home, you're going to get it for a fair price, but you're also going to build equity in the house. We want to see prices increase, not crazy increase like 20% per year like we've seen before, but a steady increase is going to keep the economy healthy. So if we look city to city, some of the more major parts of Florida, such as Miami versus Charlotte, our price per square foot is far less and you get more land. So that's one thing I want to note. It's not always about the square footage of the house. It could also be about the property it sits on. You could have perhaps the same square footage of house for the similar price, but in Charlotte and the surrounding areas, you might get a half acre with that house versus in places like Miami, Tampa, Jacksonville, maybe you're getting a quarter of an acre. So keep that in mind when you're starting your search. We do have more land available in Charlotte and the surrounding areas because we have more area to spread out. And last but not least, schools. Now, please don't take this as a negative thing, like all Florida schools are bad. I don't think that at all. I honestly think it's the area that certain people are in, that they're just not happy with the schools that they have. But one of the things that I have heard from a lot of my clients moving from Florida is they don't like the schools that their children are in, and instead they're looking for better education. Charlotte and the surrounding areas offer a lot of different opportunities. We have, of course, regular public school education. There's Montessori schools, which are highly coveted. We also have charter schools and private schools. Now, not all of our private schools are religious related, so there are some that are not related to, let's say, Charlotte Catholic, which is a Catholic driven or background. By the way, you don't have to be Catholic to go to Charlotte Catholic. So there are a lot of different education options here in North Carolina. Now, one other one that I'll throw out there is if you're interested in homeschooling your child, there's actually really great support systems for homeschool children, not only groups, but also online. So K through 12 is a great one to take a look at, and you can homeschool your child from anywhere. So those are some of the things that have been brought up by clients of mine. And the last one that I will mention, the mosquitoes apparently are far worse in Florida than they are here, but let's face it, it's a little bit more swampy, a little bit more humid, and you're gonna get that. But what Florida does have that we don't is all of that sunshine and heat all year long. So those are some of the differences that I've heard from my clients who are moving from Florida to Charlotte, North Carolina, and why they told me this is the city for them. So if that is you, whether you're moving 9 days or 90 days, whether you're moving from Florida to Charlotte or across Charlotte, give me a call, shoot me a text or an email. I'd love to make your move everything you want it to be. So until next time, I look forward to showing you around town.